Do you recommend that stays in the Zoom apps area?
I just did a pop out and moved it somewhere else.
Just heard a Discord notification come through. I don't know where that came from. Loop. Yes. Okay. That's all. That's all. I can only give you tender walks in springtime. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Happy Sunday. You're catching me fresh off the office hours road trip. Just got back from NAB plus Northern California, and so I'm fresh off seeing a bunch of people at NAB. Plus, got to see Fenwick in Emeryville. I got to see Rocket near Napa. I got to see John Edelson down in Monterey somewhere. I saw Alex at NAB, Guy, Paul Kovacs, Jeffrey Powers. I mean, it was a Jack Cannon. It was this massive, like, melting pot of office hours in real life. And I just want to say thanks, everybody. But I'm a little whirlwinded as a result. But we're here. Sunday, if you haven't been here before, is our day to be a little bit different, a little bit more philosophical. A thing about why we do what we do, about office hours, about the industry, about stuff in general. So we chew on stuff for a little longer. And we've got some questions, so we're going to dive right in. Alexander? First question up this morning is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Are we being as friendly, compassionate, transparent, and helpful to each other as we can be? And how do we gauge this?
Alexander?
You know, Paul, you always have to ask the hard questions, and frankly, I am sick of your no, I'm just kidding. There's always room for improvement, as we always like to say. And we like to document every show, what we call RFI, room for improvement. And I think everything that you mentioned in this question qualifies. I think sometimes, when we have discussions, especially on Sundays, about the direction of the show, what type of show is this? What is this show supposed to be? When we debate about, well, we should have more production questions, and we wish we had more regular panelists that have more industry, I don't know, technical production, and that we can focus on that as opposed to general computer questions or general AI questions that some people feel are less valuable. And that's certainly an opinion. Everyone's entitled to those opinions too. But I think there's always room for improvement in this area. I think sometimes my observations is that I think sometimes we respond through the lens of our own experiences. And so sometimes product recommendations or gear recommendations can sometimes be really way out of scope of what the question asker may ask. So within, I think, as much as the information that we have that was given in the question, if we are able to, if someone says budget friendly, quote unquote, let's not recommend a FX6 Sony camera that's going to cost more than $20,000. I think there are times like that where sometimes I think the answers get a little off the beaten path, and we need to try to respond appropriately. So there's always room for improvement.
I think one thing that I always try to do when a question comes in is, if I'm answering it, I've got a couple different lenses that I'm looking through. Number one, I have the lens of, this is the question asker. And as people ask more questions, you start to know a little bit more about the things that they do, especially once people get on panel. When somebody's been on the panel or tells you about a project that they're working on in Discord, all of a sudden you have all these extra pieces of context that you can use to help answer the question. What is their station in life? What are their budget constraints? What are the things that they're trying to achieve? What other things do they have around them that they can work with? And I feel like I use all of those things to go into answering the question. But oftentimes there are other ways to do it. And so if we have the time, I try to answer it directly of, if you have all the constraints in the world, or all the constraints that you've laid out, this is the approach that I would take. And then I also try to find what's the lowest hanging fruit that if you unlocked it, you would see a big improvement. Like often we get a question about, hey, I've got this camera and I'm looking to upgrade to the next camera to have better video quality. And often the answer is, well, if you threw a lot more light at the camera that you already have, you might find that you get a better looking image than if all you did was upgrade the camera. And that's just one example, but try to find what is the biggest return on investment that somebody can put into their question that might still be able to get them to get their end goal. Because that's one thing about answering, or one thing about asking questions or listening to people ask questions. And this is a big deal for the real names. I say this, I struggle with this in my, even with the town halls that I do at work. People don't like to put their names on the question. And it's tricky in a work environment to require it. So some people still put in anonymous. But part of my pitch there is you putting your name next to the question and myself as a community member having an understanding of you helps me understand the perspective that you're asking the question, and maybe the real question that's just underneath the surface. Because sometimes we think, and I'm guilty of it as anybody, I think that I'm asking for the right thing, but what I'm actually trying to achieve is something completely different. And it takes me going to a trusted mentor within this community or another one to say, is that really what you're looking to do? Or is there something else here? And the other thing about your question, Paul, that I appreciate you bringing up is the word compassionate. Because Alex used to talk about, I never had heard this phrase before, but I've come to adopt it and love it. And that's the concept of ruthless compassion. And it's like, sometimes people are hard on one another, not in a mean-spirited kind of way, but really in a way that we're looking to care about that other person. And we know that they're better than whatever the current output is. And so I've been slapped a couple times because of how I had a microphone, or how I decided to light something, or how I decided to shade something. And I knew that it wasn't because somebody was trying to beat up on me. It was somebody saying, hey, I know that you can be better than that. And it's that continuous push, especially from this community, to always keep challenging me to be better and better and better. I think that's one of the most valuable things that I've received from everyone is that constant push to keep wanting to get better, even when you're on a couple hours of sleep too many days in a row. Next question.
This one's coming in from Guy Cochran, Seattle, USA. If we're good stewards of the office hours community and mission, what would that look like 1 year from now? Blossom, vitality, flourishing, or
Ryan?
One thing that I think we should discuss on Sundays over the coming months would be whether retraining is like a core priority and a core service that we can rally around. I think there's going to be enough disruption to what a lot of the like days in the life looks like for people that are in any technology backed industry space. And I think that we're all going to need to continue to double down on the way that we keep relearning everything that we know every quarter, every month, every year. And so if we think about a really like sustainable priority and something that the world needs more broadly, that's something that I hope that we are particularly organized around in the future.
Craig?
Just thinking about a year from now. So I think there's there's the how we're operating as a community, but then I think it's how do we define our goals. I think we have a pretty wide net as far as the things we do. As far as measurement goes, it's really, are we having an impact according to our goals? I think the goals of what we're going to look like a year from now or 3 years from now as a community, I think would really be worth debating. Because I think it's different for a lot of people.
I was for sure you were going to say 100% show hub participation. Nobody needs prodding. What I think about a year from now, it's new faces, it's new members. We've been talking a lot about, especially in the last couple months as we've been going through a transition and how things are running. There's been a little bit of survival mode and a little bit of, okay, just batten down the hatches, make sure that we can get through this. I don't know, put up the heat shield. We're coming in for reentry, whatever terrible metaphor you want to use. But it feels like things are calmed down to the point, especially after going to NAB and seeing how vibrant the broader community is and this industry is, that there's room for more people within office hours. And as we continue to grow and we want to decide whether we're healthy or not, it's really, are we attracting new people at that top of a funnel? And I've said this before, and it's a little bit of a sales thing, I think, left over. But at the top of that funnel, that's your viewers, and then eventually the viewers become question askers and after hours lurkers, and then the question askers eventually they decide they want to try and be a panelist, and the panelist wants to become a reader or a host, and then somewhere in there's a little fork that happens where somebody says, well, I don't want to be a panelist or a host or a reader, but I think I could lead that community. I think I could lead that council, and I have something to say when it comes to funding, or I have something to say when it comes to new talent acquisition. There's a lot of different, or new viewer acquisition, or there's something that I have to contribute about organizing the special shows. And that's what I look at as healthy, because at some point somebody's going to change jobs, somebody's going to have a kid, somebody's going to get married, and I know that that's happened to a lot of people within the community that have been able to juggle it. But I couldn't, if all of a sudden I had a newborn, I wouldn't be able to do what I do with office hours. It'd be incredibly hard. It'd be incredibly difficult. And so, I admire somebody like Ryan who's juggling that at home. But it's one of those things that we've got to think about. Life changes for everyone, and if we don't have those new people coming in, if we're not always in the mode of thinking, what would a brand new person think about this, or the folks that, this goes back to Paul's question a moment ago about being compassionate and being friendly and being welcoming. If we're not thinking about that brand new person all the time, then they might not stick around if all of a sudden we get snarky in the wrong way, or we present something in a way that is a little bit hard-edged. Because somebody that doesn't, like, we all have a lot invested within office hours right now, and we have a lot of relationships. There's a lot of value that we clearly get if we continue to come back. And there's a great big balance in the office, in everybody's little emotional bank account with office hours. So if all of a sudden we get hit with a comment in chat that we don't like, or the host shows up 2 minutes past panel cutoff because time zones are hard, I get some grace because that bank account's pretty stacked right now. Somebody that's brand new, that doesn't have any balance in that emotional bank account, if they get slapped with a snarky remark in chat, or they get shot down at the wrong time, or they get told their questions being asked the wrong way, or whatever, that check bounces really fast, and they never come back. They never come back. So that's what you got to think about in terms of good stewards of our community and our mission right now is we don't want to grow in a way that's unsustainable and in a way that all of a sudden the floodgates open and we lose our community. However, we do want to think about what's about growing in a really healthy way. Next question.
This one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. The governance of office hours is still a mystery, and community members don't have a say in decisions. How do we fix this?
Mark?
Okay. The views, opinions, and statements made by Mark Giuliani do not express the views, opinions, and statements of the Office Hours Board, members, volunteers, viewers, or listeners. So I think that we should consider possibly having two segments on Sunday. One being an update that shows what we've done over the past week to improve things, how we've done it, and what we're going to do in the future. And it doesn't need to be a long segment. It could be 15 minutes, and then go into the questions and answers. So that's just a suggestion from me.
It's a good thought. And like Mark, I only have one little corner of the world to have a perspective on, and I think that's one of the things that office hours is that's very interesting is that we all have a different perspective on things, and we're all trying to figure out how to make a decision in the way that's the most responsible. And I think that is a more organic. I think that's a very organic way of getting to the other side of a problem, and it can feel uncomfortable if you want everything to be laid out to the letter in a bylaw. But Ryan?
Well, I know that this concern was most prominent when all of a sudden Alex was moving into a much more background capacity. And so instead of it being so visible who we were going to kind of escalate the complexities to, there's a little bit more of a decentralized body here. So, Florence has put together, with the help of a bunch of others, a visual around the different councils. And we've tried to make it obvious how folks can participate in the councils if that's of interest. And then when that still proved to be a little bit of an overly complicated web, I think that's how the idea of the CEO appointment really came to be. And so I hope that today it feels like we've kind of got a single point of contact in Guy when it comes to how decisions are made. Not that Guy would ever, be willing to really act in a way that was completely unilateral because it's just not in his nature. But we've tried to streamline it that way. And the visual around the councils and how those things kind of ultimately percolate different challenges all the way to the board, I think is a reasonably direct answer. And so I'd be open-minded to anybody who feels like there's still a lot of opacity to it.
Yeah, I'd agree with Ryan. I think it feels to me at least that it's less of a mystery than it's ever been in terms of, and maybe that, and I think it makes us move a little slower, and maybe that's a good thing. But we definitely have more structure that's visible than ever has been before, and even that's caused some consternation. I think I need another second to think about this. So, Alexander.
Yeah, and Florence Donald in the chat mentions that community members are welcome to speak up and show up, and that's true. And I feel like we have gotten better, and we are striving to work towards being more transparent. But I think there's more work to do. I mean, one of the things that I'd like to see is effectively, and I'll use the open source term as an analogy. I think we should open source everything that we're doing to the public, meaning, why doesn't all the internal discussions that we have and the documentation and everything that we're working on, in my opinion, should just be public. I think we should just have a web page where this stuff, and maybe that's something that we have to vibe code and it gets, that data gets posted there. But I think it should just be something freely accessible. So you can just click and say, oh, this is a community driven show. We've got a website. You can see exactly what the community is working on and what all the members are working on at any given moment. I think I think that is a good thing. I think Discord's a bit of a black box sometimes for people because I don't think it's the most user friendly thing. I love Discord, don't get me wrong, but when communities grow to a certain size, when you have enough members and tons of channels, and not all those channels are public, some of them are invite only. Again, that's something also we can talk about. Why is that? Then I think it can be a little overwhelming to try to find information. As much as we do a pretty good job of cross posting information that is important, notifying everybody in Discord when events are happening, stuff like that. I think, and it's clearly evident when you still see people every single week complaining about how come I didn't hear about XYZ even though it was posted in Discord somewhere. That just goes to show you there's a breakdown somewhere with the tools that we're using. I don't know what the answer is, but I think as a starter, I would love to see a lot of the work that we're doing just completely open to the public on a website that is not buried behind, well, you got to sign up to an email, and then you got to get the newsletter, then you got to get these links and blah, 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 blah. Just like we keep burying it behind all that stuff. And that goes back to just really old decisions from the beginning. And we bring it up every now and again, but nothing really gets done. And I would like to see, I'm pushing back. I'll always push back on that, but I think there's still way too much friction.
I kind of, from my point of view, I appreciate the friction. And I appreciate it not being completely open. And that it mostly comes back to a couple things. Number one, it limits the ability of someone to comment and criticize down to the people who are actually willing to go through the process and do the work. And I think that if everything is on a website that people not even from the community are looking at, and they're trying to it opens you up to, I think, getting cross-examined by someone who has absolutely no stake, and then is being a jerk just for sport. And there's no shortage of that on the internet. But that said, if someone's curious about how anything works, all they have to do is show up to the meeting. Like it's not a locked down. It's not locked down and buried, or that if somebody wants to come, if somebody reaches out to whoever's in charge of the panelist council, whoever's in charge of the Tuesday focus, whoever's in charge of funding, if you're at that meeting, you can ask whatever question you want. And the other thing that's hard about having something totally in public is that all of a sudden a whole nother mess of considerations have to come into play in terms of how you're going to document and how you're going to put something up. And eventually it devolves into like a town council or a school board meeting, which is just a soulless, lifeless, terrible, no one would ever want in a million years to sit through that. And I only say this because I've sat through hundreds of them because I used to have to live stream them. It's the most boring, dry as toast, terrible. Like, I want to do the diatribe from Christmas Vacation about, but there's bad words in it. It's terrible. It's not something I want to be a part of. So we're going to add this whole entire layer of administrative BS on top of what we do so that we can have everything in nice little, neat little boxes so that people who do paper things for a living and want to make it, I'm going to explode. I think it would cause so much work in trying to sanitize what we do into a little format to put it on the internet, that it would kill us. And anyway, sorry, Alexander.
Well, I welcome all negative and positive feedback. So I think like this is why we have moderation, right? So it's like you want to say if you want to say my show sucks, that's why I leave my YouTube chat open. Sure, I invite anybody with negative feedback, come on my show and tell me to my face. Let's have an adult conversation. Let's
Yeah,
debate
but
like
people
the
don't have
Greeks
adult
used to.
conversations on the internet. People have
Well,
adult.
it,
No. If you're going to come into this, if you want to come into this show and be as close to face as we can, like we are right now, then I think we can have an adult conversation. If somebody's going to come into the meeting and voice their opinion, I want someone to disagree with me and voice the opinion in the meeting.
but that's what
But if
I'm saying.
if somebody's going to hide behind a keyboard, then they're
Right.
going to just throw spears with no accountability. Then
Right.
they sorry.
Yeah, I understand, but what I'm trying to make clear is that I think with the way it's run now, with a closed YouTube chat and all these, we've got like 6 firewalls up between the internet and the show to comment on it. I'm being hyperbolic here, but to prove a point. But I think that I just wish we were somewhere more center as opposed to being on one side that's so extreme where just look at the numbers and look at the amount of new people that we have for panelists and people that volunteer. We have great people, but it obviously hasn't grown a whole lot. Why is that? Let's examine that. Let's pick it apart. Let's look at all our systems and how things are running and question, well, we've done it like this for the last 6 years. Does it still need to be this way?
That's a good point. And that's a really good point. We should question. There's value in questioning the why behind what we do. And that's actually one thing I think that he's not here today, but Guy's doing really well is saying, even for select events, okay, should we have the YouTube chat open for that? Should we have more documentation? Guy's been doing a really good job of questioning everything. And I appreciate that also. Craig?
Yeah, so friction is a hot button issue for me. I'm definitely of the opinion that we should remove as much friction as possible. In the early days, there was the rickety bridge concept of let's filter the inbound people because there was a lot. There were many people joining with not necessarily the same goal in mind, and so having a rickety bridge is a way of filtering to make sure that the people that got involved were truly passionate about the right things, and that worked at that point. And now I think there's more of a need for new folks to join in. So being really clear about what our organizational goals are and how we operate is important, and then really looking at the detailed points of friction of, it's really confusing to get this email without a link to that, or whatever it happens to be. For folks that have been involved, it's really hard to see what friction points there are for new folks joining. And so we definitely need new people to point out, it's really hard to join. I watched for a while, but I couldn't understand how to connect to this or who to talk to about that. And I will say, everybody that I've worked with that's doing work, volunteer organizations are super tough. We're asking people to basically have a part-time job. But everybody that I've worked with would be more than happy to have somebody new come in and join and share their load of whatever they're working on. There's very few people I can't even think of one that they want to covet something and say, no one else can get involved in this but me. Everybody has been more excited that somebody else wants to pick up and help them or share the load or run in the same direction. So I don't think I think there's more opportunity for people to join and help drive towards our collective goals.
Mark?
So, yes, we need to grow. Yes, it'll make us stronger. But running news talk stations. When I first came into the organization, I was really kind of interested in why there was so much vitriol in the social media comments. And the first thing I did was turn it all off because it wasn't helping us grow. It wasn't helping us become part of the community. it was just a place, it was a dumpster fire. So a little bit of friction does cut down on the new membership and the new people and the new faces. But the alternative is it turns into a dumpster fire really, really fast. And then you have to spend a lot of time that you could spend growing, policing everything, which doesn't necessarily help you grow faster. So I don't have the answer. It's always a balance between growth and constantly moderating the vial that comes up in the conversation sometimes. And we're all very passionate about this, and the people that are passionate about it will put up with a little bit of friction to get in if they know it's an opportunity to grow both themselves and an organization.
I think the last thing that I want to mention is there's clearly a middle ground that we should work towards in terms of friction. And whether or not everybody sees the steps that are already being taken, about having better documentation, about even having conversations about how do we make it easier to get into after hours? How do we make it easier to be a part of that community? All of the work that I know that a lot of people are doing, but Florence Donald spearheading in terms of making sure that processes and systems and how we do things are documented. What's the minimum required people to have a show? How important is that RFI role that sometimes when we're on an evening show was getting forgotten? There are a lot of people who are trying to do better at documentation and make that more accessible, but we're trying to do all those things while at the same time coming back from inertia of having things be a little bit more opaque and more of a black box. And I don't want to be there to where nobody knows how anything works, because then all it takes is that one person who was doing a thing disappears and it all falls apart. So from a sustainability, from an organizational health, from a getting new people in, I think that documentation, that transparency is important, but it's a little more nuanced than having everything be totally a black box behind a wall and having everything be totally in the open. But hopefully we can find a middle ground. Next question.
This one's from Guy Cochran in Seattle. What value do we provide to the community?
You know, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said something about knowledge and how no one of us is smart as all of us, and we show up and there's all this great conversation and we're always learning something new, and I feel that I'm connected to the most current information and the most, because whatever the buzz is, because we're all talking about it. And all of those things are still true, but I was reminded this past week of getting to spend time, getting to spend time with everybody at NAB and getting to spend time with other people in person on my little Northern California road trip. I think I reverted back to my old life where I drove 1,500 miles a week, but it was less fun in California traffic to do that many hours. It's really the networking and relationships that are possible. And there's this magical thing where if you are willing to contribute and give to this community, man, does it give back 10x. When you're contributing and willing to help people out, people notice. And all of a sudden, when you cold call someone out of the blue and say, hey, do you want to grab dinner? Do you want to grab breakfast? Do you want to just hang out for an hour? Like at NAB, there were people that I had never met before, like that, but it's hugs. I mean, oh my gosh, how did I forget? I saw Andy Carluccio and Johnny Cocatillo from Zoom again, but also like I saw Talalik while I was over hanging at that booth. I saw Elias Pirinen over at that booth. Like these were all office hours faces who I had got to spend time with on a panel. And now I'm walking up to it and everybody gives a great big hug. And we're sitting there and we're having conversation and there's debate and there's discourse and there's all this stuff that's happening in real life where I realize that there's this incredible network that exists because of office hours that all of these people would have never would have never connected. Maybe some of them would have connected, but they would have never connected on that sort of a level. And that's, I think, the greatest value is just the incredible networking. And I encourage everyone to, if you are traveling in a city that you're not normally in, think about all the questions that have been asked and what names and what locations show up with those names, and think about the little, city state that's at the end of city and state that's at the end of everybody's, tag in Discord. Look them up. It's there was something about. Okay, I'll give you one more little anecdote about people. So I was standing at the Ross booth. I had just left. Zoom. Zoom was with VizRT at NAB. And I'm texting Guy, and I'm like, hey, I'm coming over I'm over with Zoom. Where are you? He's like, oh, I'm at Ross. I said, great, we're in the same hall. I'll be over in a second. So I make a beeline for Ross. And then I'm standing there, and then Taylor's Sunderhouse is getting this awesome demo on Carbonite code, and he's got this big system in front of him, and one of the technicians is giving him his thing. And so I'm like kind of stepping back because I don't want to be overbearing and start talking in the ear of Guy, because I learned how to whisper in a sawmill. So it's like I would be overtaking his conversation while he's trying to learn. So I'm back and I'm trying to, be quiet. And then all of a sudden Bo Corder walks up. I'm talking to Bo and I'm having a good time. And I look to Guy for 1 second, and then I turn around and Bo's like, hey guys, I just wanted you to meet somebody, and it's David Ross. And I'm like, the CEO? Okay, yeah, sure. I'll talk to the CEO of Ross. This is going to be cool. But I'm on incredibly reduced sleep, and I'm trying not to make a jerk of myself and then look bad for office hours. But Guy and I literally, the night before, were late to dinner because Guy had brought up on his iPad the Ross keynote. And so I'm like, well, let me plug it into the TV. So I pop behind the hotel TV and I unplug whatever junk they have plugged in there, and I plug in the iPad, and we're watching the keynote. And then John Idleson's like, hey, are you guys ever coming out? Like, we got to get to dinner. So we had watched the keynote. So I'm telling this to the guy that was giving the keynote. I was like, oh my gosh, we just watched your keynote last night. We had it up on the TV. And then he says, oh, that's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. What was your favorite part? And I completely just completely blanked. And we recovered. What I was looking for was quorum. I couldn't come up with the name quorum, where you can have Zoom participants join into as a transport for the Ross board. But we ended up talking about how they were demoing. A guy bailed me out. We ended up talking about how they were using Llama to talk to Ross, like talk to the board. And so do me a favor, change the level to 10 on 1, 3, and 5 on channels 1, 3, and 5. But okay, that is a in real life people conversation that I would have never been able to have if it weren't for office hours. And all of a sudden, it went from, hey, it's so cool that we have a community member getting trained by a Ross technician, to, holy smokes, we're talking to leadership at Ross. And these are and reminding him the things that excite us, and hopefully influencing, and speaking for, the way that our brains are working. That was a really cool piece of value that, if you've got the chance, meet up in real life. Next question.
All right, this one's from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. What NAB booths were you most impressed with?
Well, the Creator Labs was cool. They had a really swell guy on mic check there. Was feeling great. I had my shocks in and my AirPods so I could try and hear the feedback. But if you walked over to the Creator Labs, what you would see is the awesome Mimo Live setup. And thanks to Oliver and Ronnie and John Idelson and Gabe, Michael Slade, all these people were here making this thing run. And even though that wasn't a booth per se, it was a great way to see that production happening live. And there was enough of a buzz. Okay, it just cleared up. Had loaded the low res before. It was enough of a there were enough people around us that it was causing sort of a buzz, because we kept, like, different office hours people kept coming over and saying, "Oh, what's this? What's this?" And the first NA, or we decided we weren't good. Well, how do I put this? So on Saturday, we went in and we weren't going to stream. We were not going to be streaming anything. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the people. There were all these things. Like, it was too scary. And then at some point on Saturday, it was, no, the venue has promised us that we have really good internet and we can shade the cameras and they can look really good. And can't we get something? I think we can go live. We're going to try to get Renee Ritchie's thing live on office hours. And so we're like, okay, we're going to try it. We did a test stream earlier in the day, up as soon as an hour before that, up to an hour before it actually went live. And everything was going fine. We thought that we had our act together. And then, son of a gun, as soon as Renee's talk started, two other people also started trying to stream, and the dedicated internet connection that we had wasn't so dedicated. Other people had it too. So all of a sudden, we went from everything being great to going down to 1 frame per second. Oh, just atrocious. And I finally understood Alex's analogy of, a live stream going bad is like cutting your arm off with a butter knife, because you can't stop. There's people, like, the audio is still good. There's still 60 people who are watching it. But it was a really bad feeling. But here was the magic. So as soon as it was over, we're like, okay, we have all these people who we just made this promise to. We under-delivered. How can we get a pipeline to get this show out to the community? And so Gabe hands me a hard drive that had the record out of Mimo. We put that into an iPad, put it up to frame, and then poor Josh I was texting him a mile a minute saying, hey, how can we get this into YouTube? Here's what we're going to do for the thumbnails. We got to make sure that we thank Mimo. We got to make sure we thank Bird Dog. We thank all these people who are also contributing to this. And the solution for how to get that first session published ended up being the pipeline that all of the rest of the sessions were published. And so we were able to publish all of the sessions from that Creator Lab at NAB because we failed at the live stream. And had we not tried, we wouldn't have had this feeling like we've got to quick turn around and figure out something else. And then we ended up, the only thing it cost me was I had to do an erase and install on an iPad that had cellular, and then leave it behind, and then trust that somebody's going to send it to me, please. But other than that, and Josh and Brian and a bunch of other people putting work on getting the thumbnails and descriptions updated, the community came together and was able to get something out. And even though I don't think, in general, this is not a comment on the NAB sessions because I wasn't able to watch most of them, but most of the time sessions at a trade show are real snoozers. And so I don't know how many people are going to watch them in the long run, but it does help us as a community stay in the conversation for when we do have a little bit more runway and we want to build something for next year. We can say, hey, remember all the help that they did getting our stuff out last year. And then Florence mentioned we created a playlist for all those things as well. So I would have to ask somebody else what their favorite actual NAB booth was, because I only spent that like a half a day. So it was a little bit rushed. But if I had to pick just a booth, probably the VizRT booth, just because I got to hang out with the Liminal folks and Elias and hear about cool stuff going on with NDI and Zoom ISO V3. Next question.
This one's from Mark Giuliani in Washington, D.C. With the increase in software switching, what is the future of hardware switchers?
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that, but I'll try anyway. So, it's the hardware switches to me are there's always going to be people that are like the Alexes of the world who are dyed in the wool hardware switcher people, or people who need an incredible oh, John says my iPad's been shipped. That's great. Sorry. People that need a just rock solid reliability because it's only going to do the thing and nothing else. When you get into software switchers are on a computer, and you can run anything on that computer. It's just you can't run anything perfect. You can't run it without any latency, without any frame drops. And so there's going to be a certain level of production that needs that rock solid reliability all the time, and they don't have the time to tune a computer and find the line of here's what I can run, here's what I can't run. And I don't know if that answers your question, Mark, but my 2 cents on that is just there's almost like a reliability gap of software switchers can be very reliable, but they can also be very tempting to run more things than you need to. Mark?
So let me switch the question on the fly a little bit. Is there a hybrid solution where one feeds the other and one goes out to the stream and the other one is feeding different things? It would seem to me maybe the software would feed the hardware switcher because the hardware switcher is dedicated to one task.
Well, you could, and the other way to think about it is that it almost becomes like another ME, because what you're doing in software can then just show up as an input, to the hardware switcher. But I also know that there's, for as many folks as need the rock solid reliability of a hardware switcher and need to be able to have it be expandable, there's a whole bunch of other people who either don't have the room or the budget or the desk space, I don't know, to put the hardware switch in. And the software switcher is going to give the ability to switch video I love the term vision mixer that they use in England. I think that's great. The software switchers just democratize that. They make it accessible to many more people. So I don't think in the long run, I don't know that hardware switchers in general are on the demise. I think the high-end hardware switchers are going to remain. It's the 4-channel ATEM Mini without ISO recording that I look at and I think, does that really have a place anymore if people have the ability to do so much in software? Like, they're going to figure out a way to get around, okay, these are not HDMI in sources, these are something different, but every production's got a different requirement. Like, there are things that I can do with this ATEM that I can't do in software because without getting a bunch of hardware capture cards and making it way more complicated than it needs to, because I have some sources that are just HDMI sources. So couple different thoughts there. Alexander?
Yeah, and I'll just to build up upon that too. I love software switchers. I started with hardware switchers. I still have one, which is just an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, which I actually use for a client's show because I do the ISO records off that. I'd love to switch away from that. I will be making plans to do that and have I just have to find some kind of hardware-based solution, or I may be going entirely software with Mimo Live. But I'm gonna have to get a PCI enclosure box, and I may go with a DeckLink card so I can get all the camera inputs in there. I got to convert them from HDMI to SDI, but it'd be nice to be able to use something like Mimo, because then I can just do the ISO records of the video inside of there. But software is incredibly powerful, and it has so many advantages because you can make it do whatever you want to do, but it's ultimately limited by the constraints of the resources on that computer. And I think, like CJ said, there are going to be markets where a software-based switcher just absolutely will not be able to make sense in any way, and that's going to be in bigger broadcasts. There's no way you're going to see the Super Bowl run entirely on a software based solution. That's just not going to happen, right? They have control surfaces, they have a lot of hardware involved, and there's certain mission level, mission critical level reliability that you would need, because the hardware switchers are bespoke pieces of equipment that were designed for this one job, and you can't tax the switcher because it will only do what it was spec to do. Whereas a computer, I can, on my, baseline M4 Mac Mini, I could put 20 Zoom sources in there and completely crash the computer because it doesn't have enough processing power, right? So you have to be very, very aware of how you're architecting these systems. And I want to emphasize that, because when you are working with software, you do have to do a lot of testing. You have to build it out and plan for the shows that you're doing and figure out what's the worst case scenario that I'm going to encounter, right? So if you're going to do a show, if you're doing a panel show like Office Hours, are you going to max out at 10 people? Can you absolutely say with certainty that you are never going to have more than 10 people? Well, that, depending on how you answer that, is going to determine how much money you're going to spend on the computer that you're going to use for that production.
Next question.
All right, this one's coming up from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Who are these new Office Hours people we speak of? Students, lonely AV workers, professionals, AI bots we control?
Ryan.
I think this is a really good question, because Alex talked many times about how we couldn't build this again from scratch because it was this unique set of circumstances that was the beginning of COVID, where everything was turned upside down, given a lot of the AV work was such an in-person profession at that point. And so when we think about attracting new folks, I think on one hand, we do have data. Craig is the keeper of the data around new volunteers. We have data that shows that we do have new people constantly cycling into the mix, both as panelists, as volunteers, and even as producers. So it's not like it's a total mystery as to how we would be able to grow the base of folks that are engaging in some capacity with Office Hours. But the point is also real, that we do somewhat rely upon the OGs and the momentum that and the inertia that was created basically at that spark that created this whole thing 6 years ago.
I hope that it's more students, because I think there's either students or people that are just getting their start and are in the position to ask a lot of questions, because I know that we want to serve the enthusiast and the super high end, but there's so much that can be discovered when somebody's brand new and doesn't have any preconceived notions of how things should be, that I think there's kind of a magic there. And I also think that in terms of new Office Hours members and panelists, or viewers and panelists, or however you want to say that, there is also a certain level of professional and a certain type of person who just wants to teach. And so it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg. Like, if the people aren't there to teach, are the students going to show up to learn? But I think there's something about a fresh mind that has a lot of questions that is going to help just create better conversation overall. Mark?
So it's interesting, this is my own personal life experience. When I was in architecture school, I was always interested in what was up and coming technology-wise, CAD, BIM, all of those things, and how to utilize them in the profession. But as I interned and had people looking over me with much more experience, they wanted to make sure that there was still a quality control level to all of the new technology that was being implemented. To take that further, now that I'm a principal in a firm and I'm the one dealing with the insurance companies and the lawyers, it becomes even more of a quality control and a risk assessment to make sure that we are utilizing that new technology. So I think what we want is a mixture of everything. We want the students to come in with their passion and for teaching us, the elders, how to do things in a new and possibly improved way. But we also want those with experience that can say, whoa, 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 slow down a little bit. This is a new technology. This is where we can get into trouble. How do we manage this aspect or that aspect? And I think it's the mixture of that that it makes things improve in a more responsive fashion and helps us grow.
Next question.
Ryan Redeman in Chicago, Illinois asks, had a second YouTube account or channel that was causing confusion. Went to delete it, asked me to confirm I was okay deleting the one video there. After I did, 2 brand accounts I had disappeared, restored, but now I can't admin. Have any advice?
Oh, because Google support is always so just responsive and helpful. Go ahead, Ryan. What's going on there?
Okay, so I have good news. As of this morning, it's back. So I was checking. So timeline here was that like on, let's say Monday, I had it with the fact that I'd hit save later on a video on one machine and then it wouldn't be there in my save later or watch later thing. And I'm like, oh, it's because I've got this second account. I can't understand why I've got this second Ryan Redeman YouTube account. So I went to delete it. And like I said there, said, are you sure you want to delete this one video? So I actually went and deleted that one video, hit refresh. It said, are you sure you want to delete these 0 videos? So I said, yes, I'm fine with deleting these 0 videos on this channel. And then I got a text from my brother saying the Landscape Smart channel isn't on YouTube. What's going on? I'm like, it's there. And then I get a text from the other guy who administered it. So this is my dad's Saturday morning radio show that we put up. He's like, I can't access this thing. I'm like, no way did I nuke this YouTube channel. Sure enough, it was gone. And so I'll just flip to my switcher here and show you guys something interesting because I have the other account that I have not yet restored.
And I'm in the there. Okay, I was going to say I'm in the forest right now. No, now I see it.
So Claude told me, oh, go to myAccount.google.com/brand accounts, and there's a deleted accounts link there. So I click on deleted accounts, and right away, Landscape Smart and Blueprints and Bots were both here. Now this one's I've never really done anything with, so I might restore it, but it's kind of useful that it's still here. So I tried to click restore right away, and down here it said there's an error, wasn't working. So I tweeted per Claude's recommendation, tweeted at the YouTube creators people. They're like, there's no way to get them back. So I came back here trying to kind of take some screenshots and give them more info to be like, I didn't do this. This was some bug that cascaded. And I clicked the button one more time and it did successfully restore the Landscape Smart account. But then for days, the account was super jacked up. The banner image was gone and I could not administer it. I was locked out of it. It just did exist. So at least the videos weren't gone. So, I don't expect that anybody's got answers, but I would imagine that this group would find it of interest and maybe want to take note that deleting an account is a bad idea because it can have I am certain that this was a real issue on the back end. I mean, it said you're going to be deleting 0 videos. There was no known linkage in that way.
Alexander?
You're not the only person to run into this. And they could probably do a better job in the user interface. Yeah, but there's a big difference between, say, like a personal account, Google account, can manage a bunch of different channels, but then they have like brand accounts, and so it can be very easy to, like, you want to delete the channel, not the account, because if you delete the account and it's managing other channels under that, then you're right, the whole thing disappears. And I think that whole interface needs a bit of work.
Yeah, the whole concept of the umbrella account, as Kyle puts it in the chat, is it's a little scary because if you're going to delete something that then is administering or has access to those other account, you have to be more upfront about it because you have people's livelihoods who are tied up in this. I mean, what we're doing, and I can't speak for the for the landscape channel or the radio channel. But what anything that I'm doing is small potatoes compared to some people who are making, you know, their living, like their livelihood is dependent on that YouTube channel. And man, if you were to all of a sudden do anything that is going to mess with the ability to get at your page, that's they should tell you. Anyway, so I guess we should all tweet at the YouTube creator feedback, or I don't know, talk to somebody. Next question.
Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida asks, how do we see the main after hours room as opposed to after hours breakout rooms purpose?
My take on the breakout rooms is that if you're having well, let me back up. If after hours is something that can just be left open, if somebody has a question, they can pop in and ask it, and then folks can start talking about the question, and then folks that just happen to have after hours open can then be listening to it. It's a way to kind of get little dribs and drabs of information throughout the day, or you hear something that you might be able to help someone out with. If you get into a conversation that is not, that's either a little off topic, or maybe is going to go, or maybe is specialized in a way that's not going to be appealing to the bigger group. Like if we were to do I don't know if it's a ruthless review, or even like, I think the other day, Chris, when I was having a burger with Chris Fenwick, he was giving me retirement advice. And then somewhere in that conversation, it was like, this would be great in after hours. And I was like, yeah, but probably in a breakout room. It's like, there it is.
Did he tell you what stocks to invest in? Because that's a thing with him.
He did not tell me what stocks to invest in, but he did. He did make sure that I was thinking about things in the right way. But anyway, it was a fascinating conversation, and I agreed with him that it probably could be beneficial to other people, but it's not. But it's off topic, and I wouldn't want to put it in the main after hours room. And so that's probably the best way that I can say it, is that if there's something that is slightly off topic that you don't want to, pollute the main room with, and that's why that breakout room exists. But I'm happy to have other opinions on these things. Alas, there are no hands. So next question.
From Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada, do we want more questions that the regular office hours members already know the answer to spark conversation and cater to newer members, or does that come across as disingenuous?
I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it comes across as disingenuous, but I would want people to ask. I think the most valuable questions are questions that are in response to a problem that someone's actually having in the moment. Like, I don't want to manufacture questions just to be fillers. I want somebody to be like, okay, I was in here, and I was trying to do the thing and it didn't work, and I need your help. Okay, if that's a legitimate problem that someone's having and you can help them, we do two things. Number one, we realize that this is still a stumbling block for people, and it helps us ask better questions. But number two, we've directly addressed that new person's question, and so there's a dopamine hit. There's a like feeling of being seen, I guess. But they've now received some sort of value from the community, and they've been enriched by that. If we start filling the bench with a bunch of questions that are one-on-one questions, I think we'll see the caliber of potential viewers kind of go downhill, because then they're going to be like, oh, this is like the one-on-one show. There's got to be a mix of both, and that's why it's so important for everybody to keep doing and trying and pushing the envelope, because then we end up seeing a new problem that we've never encountered before, and it can be something that we can use to actually enrich the community. If it's manufactured, I think people are going to feel it. Craig?
Yeah, I think preceding is kind of a slippery slope. There was a change that happened with the Alex change where we were having shows every day at the same time, and so there was a reset of Mukana at a certain time, 7 o'clock. I forgot it was 7 Eastern or Pacific, but it was reset. And so you had a long amount of time in order to, hey, I've got this question, let me submit it. With shows happening at all different times of the day, depending on the day of the week, it's a little bit tougher to submit things ahead of time because of the where the reset happens. And so a lot of times in Q&A shows, we'll just have a flurry of, we'll have 2 or 3 questions before it starts, and then the typical flow in. I would like to see a better way of queuing things up so that people can, 7 or 8 hours when they're dealing with something, say, you know what, I've got this issue, give me some help, and then be able to see it later. Relying on everybody just pouring questions in at the last minute is really, it's tough on panelists. And I don't think it's as good a question, because if somebody submits a question that needs a little bit looking into, there's not enough time if it's during the show or 5 minutes before the show. So I think that's something we need to work on more, is how do we queue things up ahead of time so that we can get quality review research on it and get a better answer.
CJ, do we lose you?
Oh, no.
Yep.
Next question.
So
Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. Do people want after hours Zoom published on, for example, the website or on our YouTube channel?
Go ahead, Craig.
the thing is with after hours, I go through phases of being active in it and not. One of the things I really enjoy is that it's not recorded and not shown publicly. I can see who's there, and there's a certain amount of freedom of conversations. And I think if it was too public, there's people that want to come in and say, hey, I want a ruthless review. How's my lighting? How's my camera? A lot of that kind of help me with this, or let me share my screen because I'm having this issue. A lot of that stuff just wouldn't happen if people knew that it was being either recorded or put out on YouTube live. So I'd be really careful about that. And maybe there's a one of the rooms that we could say, this particular room is going out live to YouTube. So if you go in there, understand that, but the rest is not recorded. Like, maybe there's opportunity for something like that, but I'd be really careful.
Ryan?
And I'm interpreting the question potentially as not like, should we broadcast what's going on in after hours out to YouTube, but rather like, should it be easy to discover by being like having the links posted out there? And even that, I've got my hesitations around, just because we know that the internet is a challenging place, and that of all things for us to maybe keep a little bit more guarded, I think we all believe after hours to be pretty precious. And so not sure which direction we're going, but I think we got to be pretty careful with something where we're letting people live in on Zoom with video and audio. We've had our challenges even within our gated community there.
Yeah, I think the middle ground would probably be like, I like the idea of having it in Discord somewhere. Maybe because I don't know, the email is. I had to put after hours in like a note on my phone and then make it into a shortcut or something, because I just don't read email. It's a bad habit. But this is whenever I see an email, even the office hours show email, if I get the same email or a very similar email every single day or every single week, something in my brain clicks and I just stop seeing it. Like, it stops existing. I've had an important partner that was giving me weekly update emails, and 3 weeks in a row I got this spreadsheet that had all the things that we were working on it, and then like a little status update. And like 3 weeks went by and I got the same report and nothing changed. And I was like, okay, this email's a waste of time. I'm never going to read it again. This is not a healthy thing. But I've trained that vendor, for better or worse, to know that he needs to text me or call me when there's something actually important to talk about, because if it looks like a form letter email, I'm just going to delete it summarily. and or not delete it, but I'm gonna create a rule that's gonna put it in a folder, and if I'm curious, I'm gonna go into that folder and read the latest update. But unless I have some curiosity about it, I'm not gonna want to pour over everything just because there's not the time to do that kind of thing. So there's I'm for a little bit better discoverability than email only. However, Ryan's and Craig's comments are valid because you don't need somebody Zoom bombing us. Next question.
All right, this one's coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Question: management on office hours is a black box of mystery with zero transparency. How do we add guardrails?
Oh my, we are that's spicy. Ryan, go ahead.
I think it's called moderation, and I think moderation is something that is always going to involve human discretion. There's stuff, because the internet is challenging, that comes through that cannot make it onto our channel for our quality standards and for the sake of this being a clean show. And we're not going to make this completely algorithmic that's just looking for particular words. There's nuance. And so the question management team and the function is something that has been looking for volunteers for a long time. And so I don't like the idea that we're throwing stones at folks when these are volunteer positions that are in need of, in a lot of cases, not speaking only to this area, but to many areas. Like, these are teams that are in need of additional volunteers, and we cannot be throwing stones at such a great frequency with regard to how human judgment, which is literally what's being asked of these folks, is being applied.
Craig?
Yeah, I think moderation of whether it's chat or question manager questions in this case is a very thankless job. People rarely ever say, "Hey, you did a great job moderating," because most of it, like an iceberg, is below the scenes. People don't get to see of just crap that comes through the QR code questions. And as Ryan said, these are volunteers that are doing their best to keep high quality questions aligning to the show, so that you don't have repeat things all over so that they're well organized. And I think they do a great job. And I think they put up with a lot of craziness behind the scenes that people just aren't aware of. And so I'm personally very grateful for them elevating the level of questions that we get and how we answer them. So thanks to the team, and anybody interested in helping out in that area, I'm sure that they'd be welcome.
Mark?
So I agree. And Mickey says in the chat, at Paul Wallace, none of this is true. You of all people know this, given the amount of communication you have with the question team. And I'd just like to remind Paul that if you're in Mukana, you get to vote the questions up or down, and that's a method of quality control. We also have question managers and people on the back end volunteering their time to go through all of this. And, there's two different ways to get the questions in. And one has a lot more ability to be screened than another. So I think they're doing a great job. I don't know that we want to be 100% transparent, because that invites bad things to happen in the future and a constant policing of the questions and the tone of them. So as Ryan said, we want to keep the show a quality show. So we have to have some discipline to it.
Yeah, and you just don't want somebody to game it. It's really what it comes down to. When things are super cut and dry or algorithmic, it's only a matter of time before somebody games it and starts to dominate it in a way that wasn't intended. And it is delicate. I value the QM team from a host perspective, because they help make sure that what is actually coming in onto air makes sense. Like, there are some days where they're trying to figure out, is this a Sunday question? And if it is a Sunday question, is the host that's going to get the Sunday question going to say, hey, this is a Sunday question. I need to answer this for, in a really short way that I'm going to put on the internet. But if you want to have something that's not going to live forever and have a conversation, that's something for Sunday. What it comes down to, for me, and I've had a lot of conversations with Laura and the greater QM team on this, is number one, we want to make sure that the questions are befitting of the show, right? It's a production question. It's it's on topic. It's not something that's going to be, or that's designed to incite emotion, as far as it's not something that's political. It's not something that's religious. It's not something that's mean-spirited. But the other thing that they're looking for is, okay, is the question, sir, is it serving the show? And that's not just from that's not just from an on topic or not. But if you're going through that QR code bucket, which has a lot of, just nastiness in it, and you're trying to pick out what are the good questions, sometimes you're going there and figuring out, okay, like, even if this is about media and production, is it worded in a really in a gaslighting sort of way? Is it a firebomb that's veiled inside of a question? And so there's a lot of nuance there that's difficult to just to codify, and it's something that, just like a host or a panelist is working on getting better every single week on how do we do a better job and do a better job for the show. Next question.
I just want to be clear that there were no exclamation marks in Paul's question. I editorialized for humorous effect on that one, if that wasn't obvious. This one is one of my questions. Why don't we use super chats? We're leaving money on the table with YouTube. Many YouTubers use this as a way for people to send money to support a show and have their questions answered live and get a shout out.
Okay, help me out with this, because I've you're gonna make fun of me. I've never seen a super chat, and I don't know what a super chat is.
Engaged on a live stream with super chats?
Nope, I don't. I do this show live streams. That's it.
It's actually pretty cool. I jump on other people's shows, and one of the shows that I watch it's actually a pretty big show, is John Campia's channel, and it's cool on a live stream because he answers questions, and if you use super chats, and it can be any dollar amount. So for example, like if I give $5 in a super chat, I'll post the question, and it shows up in the live stream with like a special graphics with my name, with this little thing that says super chat, and then the amount that you donated, and then he'll read that on the show. And I think that's it's kind of cool to hear your name and get your question answered on the show, and it's a way to also show your support for that show monetarily. And I just feel like that's an additional revenue stream, and I think having the donation page on our website, with the membership thing is fine. We can keep that, but I just think this is an additional interaction component that we're not utilizing, and we should qualify for that now because of the size of the channel.
Oh, I see that. So, and in the chat, Paul and Tim are mentioning that I guess YouTube takes a 30% cut of that, and Aaron Parecki uses these. Aaron Parecki was also very, very nice. He came to our little hangout on Sunday night. And I missed Paul Kovacs earlier. I saw him in the chat. Paul was there. Sorry. It was this crazy, just a bunch of people showed up kind of thing. Aaron is super nice, by the way, and we chatted. I think there is going to be some sort of, we're figuring out the best way to do a collaboration or a crossover with him, because he had a lot to say and was a super personable guy. But now that ADD squirrel has run across the screen, super chats. So I don't know if we have enough. I mean, Aaron Parecki's got 30 or 40, maybe 50,000 subscribers. I don't know. Does he have is there enough? Like, I feel like the critical mass for questions without a super chat, like we always say, our question flow is nice when we have 100 to 150 people. I feel like to make the super chat model work, it has to be a lot higher than that in terms of viewership and in order to actually make money. But maybe I'm mistaken. Alexander?
Yeah, and I'm just showing a screenshot just so you can visually see the difference. Now, of course, I guess it wouldn't work for us because we've taken a hard stance on turning off live chat on YouTube. So you would have to turn this on. Now, I don't know if there's a way to access this via the API, but I'm pretty certain you do have to have live chat turned on. But just so you can see there in the screenshot, these really, really stand out. You can see that. So I just think it's a really cool way to interact with the show.
The only other thing that I'd need to figure out with that is how does it for a 501c3? Is there any consideration there of what it's like to take money? My perennial pitch is just to everyone to consider the value that you've got from office hours on a given day or on a given week, and then you can tell me if is it $5, is it $10, is it $100, is it $1,000? It's a different number for everybody, but if you've received some value from office hours, consider giving some of that value back at officehours.global/donate, because it helps us keep the lights on and helps us keep everything moving forward. And I set mine up as a weekly because then I don't have to think about it anymore. Mark?
So I guess I'm trying to wonder how this gets implemented, because if it truly becomes a pay-for-play scenario, and we're trying to grow the members of office hours, grow the panel, grow the people coming in and acting as producers, aren't they in conflict with each other?
Yeah, I share that view, or that hesitance, I guess I'll say, because we're trying to get new people in. And this feels that could be another barrier. My hope is that I really am serious about the student thing. I think a younger energy and a younger passion and somebody that's in the mode and has the time to be discovering new stuff all the time will challenge all of us to keep discovering new stuff. And we can, filter in some of the little nuggets of wisdom along the way. Ryan?
I think it's a little bit crazy to think that we can't monetize in ways like that. And meaning a lot of the channels have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, hundreds of thousands of concurrent viewers that do this. And we're not seeing those creators get revolted against for enabling such a simple little concept. I mean, us not having YouTube chat, legitimate blocker to us using Super Chat, I think. But us betraying the community because we enabled a monetization thing when frankly, the community, as the treasurer, based on our viewership, the community is doing more than what would be expected of a typical community in the form of volunteer hours, but a lot less than what these for-profit creators are harvesting with regard to their community. The fact that this is a 501c3 is obviously kind of a complicated scenario, in that we have to be especially careful here, but that should really motivate everybody all that much more to try and kind of make it easy for us, right? Every time we want to try and navigate a little bit of a sponsorship deal, we really end up having to do a lot. If folks would go in and turn on a couple $1 a week recurring donation, like we all probably spend on all of the creators that are running for-profit organizations that we all interact with, we would be in a really, really great place. The number of people that we have on auto donate across this community fits on this many fingers.
Alexander?
100% agree with Ryan. Obviously, like he said, not turning on live chat's a pretty big impediment to using super chats, but I think it's a little exaggerated to say it's a betrayal to turn it on. I
don't know that anybody said betrayal. To be clear, those were my words, Alexander. Nobody else said it was a betrayal.
I understand, but I get what your point is, and I think that at the very least, and I know it's been brought up in the past, but we haven't really discussed it in quite some time, because I remember in the past we had, it might have been a year ago or more, but because we had Alex Lindsay on a Sunday at one point talking about this, but I really think with the existing donation system, we should at least put a link. Something should be inserted into the Makana chat. Because I guarantee you, we would probably get a few more people donating money if they saw that button. It's just something there. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but just a little banner or something at the top there. It doesn't have to be pushy.
I agree. Also, is it in the YouTube description? Would be my other option.
I'm gonna check
Maybe
right
it
now.
is, maybe it isn't. But you don't have to be. There's a difference between being, I'm not shy about asking for money, and I'm pushy about asking for money. Nobody wants me to be chirping in your ear every 5 minutes asking for a donation. That gets really old really fast. But it is something that we've talked about on the funding team, specifically about worried about being too pushy about saying that there's a donate page doesn't mean that we never ever talk about the donate page. There's a way to do it in a way that people can know it's there without it being overbearing. And we have to police that. We have to watch that so that we're not being annoying with our hand out all the time. But there are other podcasts and other organizations that do a really good job with this, with asking for the donation. And I think there's what Alexander said about the Makana chat is spot on. Like there's an opportunity, there's plenty of room in there just to have a button. And if a couple people do that, then and set up a recurring, that makes a big difference. Craig?
Sorry, just but to take my hand down, but I'll say it looked like the requirements were, I put it in the Makana chat, but it's 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 public watched hours, which we easily cover. I think just another note on what Ryan said, that the actual budget for what office hours has and can do is so extremely limited. A lot of people are paying for things out of their own pocket, and so a little bit goes a long way in that regard. So exploring these different things, I know we have another YouTube monetization, but any of these sort of things where we can explore different ways to pull money in, whether it's sponsors or YouTube monetization type activities, really unlocks a lot of things that we're having to say no on just because there isn't budget.
Next question.
This one is coming in from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. While I fully support monetizing the YouTube VOD, even with more than 8 minutes of ads in one show, can markers be used where we would prefer the ads? Having an ad interrupt panelists in the middle of a complex answer is not nice.
Yow, that's rough. I don't know the answer to this question. Ryan?
I definitely saw some chatter in Discord amongst the YouTube team, looking, for example, at whether this could be done only on the video on demand so that it was not enabled for the live stream with that exact intent in mind. So this is being investigated actively.
So it interrupts the live stream with an ad? Is how it works now?
I don't think so. Sorry to jump in, but when we first talked about it, it was how do we do this so it's not interrupting the show? If somebody's giving an explanation, it's like, well, all right, is it putting that on hold? And then during the ad time, you're out of sync with the chat.
Right.
It doesn't work in a live environment. So I'd be surprised if that actually is the case. But I think it's useful feedback of how do we explore this way to monetize on video on demand, so that there is a logical breakpoint of, all right, this is a reasonable place to insert an ad.
Mark?
But I don't think it's on live.
So you could do it live. You'd be this far away from professional broadcasting. You would take a break and say, hey, we've just finished answering this question, and now a word from our sponsor. And you take a 30-second break or a 20-second break, and you don't even have to say much. It just has to be the sponsor's webpage, and then move on. That could draw some income and some revenue.
Come on. Let's do it. Host red ads. Bring them in.
Live reads, even better.
I'll do a live read all day long. I love a live read. I was doing live reads at 17 years old. I'm ready. Bring it back. I hope that there's a way to pick where the ad goes, because if you get 8 minutes of ads, that just sounds atrocious. I can't watch 30 seconds of ads. So I'm the wrong person to ask this question of. But I'm like, during football season when we have a TV subscription and I'm channel surfing and I get to a movie and I was like, oh, that's like one of the magical things about television, right? Is you're flipping through channels and then you see a movie that you're like, oh, I love this movie. I'll pick up from here and watch the rest of the movie. The first ad break, I go find the movie on streaming or buy the movie so that I can watch the rest of the movie without ads, because I just can't do it. Because I'm all invested in the story and they know what they're doing. It's like, as soon as the emotion gets heightened and the chase is happening and you're like all of your cortisol levels are up or whatever, and you're just excited, then they're going to say, and buy a new car. I don't like that. So but in the chat, there are saying that Robert Linkram says that there is a way to, Robert Linkram says that's the way to do breaks. Hopefully there's a way that we can just pick a point in between two questions, if we have to have an ad roll in like that, to where it's not going to interrupt someone's thought, because sometimes somebody's explaining a really complex thing and they've got a diagram and you're just barely trying to figure it out, and all of a sudden it's like, and now for something completely different. Mark?
So I think we also have to keep in mind that because we're a 501c3, there may be a reason for not doing traditional ads like you have on for-profit broadcasting. If you look at NPR, they're doing sponsorships, not ads. So you could do non-intrusive sponsorships by maybe in the pre-roll before the show, just have a bug that comes up for those people that have sponsored the show. Maybe in lower thirds, you have a bug pop up once in a while. And then at the end of the show, you have bugs pop up in the credits.
Next question.
This one is from Paul Vol, who's in Austin, Texas. If you had to name the, quote, elephant in the room in office hours and after hours, what would that be? The unexpressed concerns and issues.
Before today, I would have said money, but we've been doing a good job of beating that horse for the last 40 minutes. We're member supported with a couple of sponsorships. We're trying to work on more stuff, but we still haven't. But the big elephant in the room to me is that we still haven't figured out a way to sustainably cover our, fixed costs, our business as usual costs, so that we can be in the mode of what's next. We're still in the mode of survival. And so for me, there's a switch that flips when we go away from survival mode and into what's next mode, that just unlocks a lot of other possibility. Besides that, the other thing that we've actually talked about today, which is just new people getting in, new people coming in to ask questions, new people coming in to be panelists, and what is the thing, and I don't know what it is, but what is the thing that limits? Have we made the setups too nice? Have we put as panelists too much effort into our frames so that somebody doesn't want to come in brand new because they're worried about how they're going to look? Is it that we need to have a more intentional effort as a welcoming committee for the community? I don't know what the answer is, but the two things, when I put my head on the pillow and think about, okay, what are the things what are my big risks at office hours? What are the things that, that literally are the keep me up at night kind of stuff? It's making sure that we're okay financially and figuring out how do we solve the membership problem? Because those two things are, in my view, are the most existential for what we're doing. Now, there's easier said than done. There's a whole bunch of other entanglements that come along with that, like making sure that we don't lose our sense of identity, making sure that we're being true to our mission, true to our purpose, that all still need to be satisfied while attending to those things. But those are the biggest for me. Next question.
This is one of my questions. Anyone order one of these 10 gigabits per second USB NICs? Would love to hear your experience.
I want to see this as well. So here's what Alexander's talking about.
Looks very cool.
Apologies for the light mode. So sold out here, but yeah, $80 for a 10 gig network adapter, and it's so little. I think Mickey sent me this. It's just a little USB-C on one end and then Ethernet on the other. I have the OWC one. It's Thunderbolt, but it's massive. I mean, this thing's it's a chunky little NIC, and that one's really tiny. So no, but if anyone took the plunge and reacted quickly enough when it came up somewhere, this is the thing. It's WISDPI, WISDPI.com. And 99 people are viewing the product. I wonder how many of them are in this room. Next question.
This one is from Svetlana Hodzina in Minsk. Good Sunday. The other day, you presented super tiny microphones. What's the greatest distance mics that size provide decent, clear audio for interviews?
Well, it's a big it depends question, but Alexander's going to help us down that road.
You know, it's a frequent question that we get asked on this show, and you always want to maximize your signal to noise ratio, which means trying to get mics as close to the talent as possible. So for interviews, it's not uncommon to usually use two different microphones. You might hide a lav on the talent, but you'll probably end up using the overhead boomed microphone. Now, obviously, there are different microphones you can use for this. Some people use shotguns like a Sennheiser 416. Other people prefer something like the Sennheiser MKH50, which is one of my personal favorites. That's actually a condenser mic, not a interference tube style microphone. So generally you want to get it just out of frame, have a boom operator there, or if you can't have a boom operator, put it on a boom pole that is tall enough to get it up and above the talent's head and pointed down so it's pointed at their mouth, but just out of the frame. So I always try to get a microphone as close as possible. When people sometimes ask me about this stuff, how they claim they are not able to get a microphone close to someone, or they just don't, for whatever reason. And it's like, there is no magic unless you're talking about a parabolic mic, which has a very specific use case in sports broadcasts, which is not going to be the most highest fidelity. There's no magical microphone that's just going to instantly perfectly pick up their voice and not pick up the sound of the acoustic environment by having that 6 feet away from them, which is ridiculous. So buy a good microphone, get it really close.
So the other phenomenon that has been coming up that has reinforced what Alexander just said is the amount of people are realizing that while it was a trend for a second to hold the little lavalier and look, which I think looks really silly, but I'm going to hold the lavalier like this and say, "Hey, can you answer my question?" Or holding the little DJI microphone, like a DJI Mic 2, or the Rode mic, those little clips, up to someone. People realize that looked silly, and so my favorite thing that's come up is the dummy like stick mic sled. That is, it's like $20 for a set of two, and people, fish that, or they stick that little DJI mic or the Rode mic in the end of the thing, and then they put a big honkin', Brian's got one right now. They put a big honkin' muff off on the end of it. And then it looks more like a normal mic, and it's really just for looks, but it helps you get the microphone as close to someone as that needs to be without it being, without it looking quite so silly. But it's all about proximity. All we're trying to do is get that microphone close to someone and not have it be, not have your arm get tired. It's and Omar was using that at NAB. I had one packed for NAB, but even though I brought 66 pounds of gear to NAB, the only thing that we used it for was the Sunday show, because I thought we were going to do some VODs, and I was going to try and record stuff on Sunday to cut it on Monday to get it published. And there was so much stuff going on that we just didn't end up doing it. And and Guy's after hours appearance without all that extra gear looked better, or his extra hours appearance without all that gear, as Grant so lovingly pointed out, did look better than the Sunday show. But we both had to be in the same room at the same time, and I was more demanding about having hardwired internet connection. So there. But yeah, these are pretty slick. Next question.
All right, this one is from another one of my questions. Man, I'm just putting them all in here. Anyone watch John Parker's ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G2 review on YouTube? It's the first one that I know of in its existence since the product was announced a year ago. Are you any closer to upgrading? So it's about an 18-minute watch, by the way, on that link that I posted there. And it's very thorough. In fact, he unearthed some stuff that I did not know about that product.
And also has a whole section in the middle, a whole 4 or 5 minute section on the Fairlight Live integration. That's new stuff. So very cool. I need to watch this. I need to watch this and put my payment methods in a safe, so I don't. Chris Fenwick actually told me the next time that you're going to buy something that someone recommends on office hours, if you don't have an active job that requires you to buy it, just donate the money instead. And I was like, okay, that's that's probably a good thing, or invest it. But no, I will check this out because I respect John Barker's opinions, and this one looks really well done. I also appreciate the fact that the HDMI cords have different colors, which I think is nice. I know that that's an aesthetic thing, but it makes it very nice and visual for the video. I hope that they are mapped to the different colors on the keys, but we'll see. I need to spend more time with this. I'll admit I ended up getting a Rodecaster Video S, a pair of them instead of one of these for a job, and I've been pretty happy with them. But I'm always curious as to what's new and different. Thanks for letting us know about that video, Alexander. Next question.
All right, Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois asks, I am streaming a celebration of life and was told that YouTube Live does not work in Poland. Can anyone recommend an easily distributed, non-public platform for people in Poland to watch?
I know YouTube TV doesn't work in Poland. I thought YouTube Live did. Well, nevertheless, if it doesn't, I would suggest streaming into something like Zoom, and then putting it out as depending on how many people you're going to get, either as a meeting or as a webinar, maybe even a Google Meet. But we all know that Zoom's going to have the better video quality. James Haldane puts in that he thinks it works in Poland as well. So I would double check that is it YouTube Live or is it just YouTube TV that doesn't work in Poland. Otherwise, you could try something like Zoom, or I even think Vimeo will let you do a stream over there. Next question.
This one's from Ryan Reiteman, Chicago, Illinois. Does anyone have familiarity with the Big Marker webinar platform?
I do not have any idea about the Big Marker webinar platform. How did you find this, Ryan?
So we had Tenacious Ventures, which Guy often helps with, do a professionally produced webinar this week, which is amazing. And what's funny about it is the process of using them had my marketing team essentially come to appreciate that their previous webinar platform had major deficiencies. And so they went on a big mission to go find what should replace it. And they've selected Big Marker for those that we can't do external, like third-party support for. And so I went to the website. I was surprised I hadn't heard of it before. I wasn't necessarily impressed by the website. I don't have any basis to go off of. So I was just curious if anybody had experience, and I'll keep an eye on the chat to see if anybody in the audience does.
Yeah, I like James' answer, no, but I always make sure to have a big Sharpie in your bag. That's you get the Sharpie that's the Pro Marker Sharpie. It's like it's about $1 more. It's got a nice chisel tip, but man, it holds up if you write in nasty places. It just won't quit. Last physical inventory, I used 3 markers in a day, I felt like I had accomplished something. Go with that. That's my big marker. Next question.
All right, John Snyder in Reno, Nevada asks, does office hours make more money if I play the full ad rather than skipping it?
I believe the rules on YouTube are you need to watch 30 seconds of the ad before skipping it in order for the creator to get credit. If the ad is shorter than 30 seconds, you need to watch the whole thing, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if you skip it, we get nothing and like it. Next question.
Okay, this question is from Ryan Redeman in Chicago, Illinois. Is anyone here using Codex as much or more than they are using Claude or Claude Code?
Craig.
So I'm mostly on Claude Code these days. I'm experimenting with a few other models, but I think it's really there's a whole context switching thing with any tool that if you jump out of one to join the other, there's a bunch of UI and learning you need to do and experimenting, and there's a cost to that. I think I think a lot of people would be better served just learning whichever one that they're starting with now, and then evaluate maybe once every 3 or 4 months. Trying to stay on the cutting edge is, I think, a fool's errand, because what you'll end up doing is switching back and forth between multiple every other week. So learning, how do I take advantage of this, especially now with agents? There's a lot of background things that you can be doing with any of these platforms. But I would encourage, don't just switch to the latest. Learn the one you're in, whether it's Codex or Claude Code or something else.
Ryan.
One interesting thing you reminded me of as you talked through that, Craig. Codex is OpenAI's model associated with ChatGPT, and so one thing I've found hard about getting folks to adopt Claude Code is they have a ChatGPT paid subscription, and they're hesitant to make the switch from ChatGPT to Claude just because they've got their chat history in there, they've got their familiarity with it, and so maybe that's actually one of the biggest reasons I should encourage folks to try it. So yeah, to totally appreciate Craig's point. If you're ripping on Claude Code, stick with it. If you are not yet in the Claude Code ecosystem at all, PSA, download that Codex app for Mac and give it a try. It even works for people on the free subscription. You get a decent amount of usage on the $20 subscription. And if you have the new $100 subscription that they just offered, prepare for that 60-day psychosis that folks talk about.
I am so relieved that you said if you're currently using Claude Code, stay there, because if you would have said switch to Codex, I would have had to, because you're the person I listen to with these things. And I think the end of February, Ryan's like, no, you need to start putting stuff into GitHub and start talking, use Whisperflow to start talking to your Claude. And now I have like a dozen repos up of different stuff that I'm working on, and most of them are private, but still, it's like I was flying back from California on Friday, and I was thinking to myself, oh, well, we should just do this. Oh, I could do that in Claude Code. Now it's like, I'm like trying to manage all the ideas to figure out what I want to work on next. And if you would have said to me that you've got to switch to Codex, I don't know, I would have had to take a week off of work. So happy but yes, if you're in ChatGPT and you don't want another subscription to another service, and you haven't experienced going through the process of creating an app when you thought that you really couldn't before, it is so much different than the clowning around that we were doing in early 2023, where we were copying and pasting responses out of ChatGPT and putting it into Xcode, and then like I did that and thought that I was hot stuff, but whew, this is a whole new world. Next question.
This one's coming from Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. I build 120 plus websites since April 1st. Am I nuts?
Well, we didn't need the preamble. We know you're nuts, and that's why we love you. This is it's so the stuff like the this whole story, and Paul's told the story on the site before, but this whole story about Paul lost access to these websites, and he had like the Colin Firth website and the Oscars website and the Austin Spring website taken from him somehow, and then was able to get them all back, and then is just cranking away. And in the course of a month, I mean, the output of creativity, productivity, whatever you want to call it, for anybody to say, hey, we're going to do 120 websites, Claude Code or not, it's just incredible. So I wish I had that kind of energy and that kind of passion, and I'm so incredibly jealous that you have it. And yeah, pretty incredible. As the other thing to think of that I'd be curious to hear from you, Paul, is like how has that been for you? How has that been for you mentally? Like how are and I don't know, is it emotionally? Like, what's the right word? Because like to have that kind of a creative output in such a concentrated amount of time, were you like before you started cranking on Claude or Codex with these websites, what were you doing with that time? And do you feel like you're in a better spot now that you're using it creatively, or are you just tired because that's just a ton of websites? Anyway, swing around here. James Haldane says, I noticed that there were fewer Paul questions. I guess he was over there. But anyway, come on next Sunday, and we should take a peek at him, because I know so far I saw just the Oscars one, the Colin Firth super page, and the Austin Spring one, but there's always more. Anyway, thanks everybody. Happy Sunday. Paul says he's made him more sane and he has clients. So, hey, if it's paying bills, even better. But yes, again, back to the thank yous. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our panelists for coming in, bringing your perspective. Your unique little corner of the world has this perspective that's all your own. And so Sundays are here for you to share it, for you to talk about office hours, about what makes us tick. We can't do it without you. Thank you to our producers for asking such great questions. And it was great to see a bunch of stuff in there from Paul. He had us really thinking hard about asking the tough questions today, which is good. That's what Sundays are for. Also, thank you to our back-end crew who is putting up with my lack of sleep and multiple time zones and sending out flares for me to show up, but also making sure everybody else looks and sound good and making it seamless so that, it's a different crew on Sundays. We have different systems that we've been testing, and appreciate them helping us move forward, and even amid talent challenges, getting us out to you. Tulalip Traversal, should we have gone in person to ask all these questions for episode 2224, we would have gone 47,000 miles, 76,000 kilometers. That's 373 million bananas for scale. Right, we'll see in after hours. It's a lot of bananas. It's twice around the earth. I did get pretty emotional this week, though. I went, I did this crazy trip on Thursday morning. I didn't have anything to do. I was supposed to, it's a long story, schedule, I flipped it around. So I decided that I was just going to go on this crazy road trip through the forests and parks of California. And when I saw the redwoods for the first time, and when it hit me that this tree that I was looking at was 2,000 plus years old, I was like just so incredibly humbled by the whole experience. It was very, very cool. Also, Zoom, by the way, they put on a show. I got a tour at the Zoom's Customer Experience Center, trying to negotiate some stuff. They like put me in this big conference room with this big curved LED wall with 0.9 dot pitch stuff. They're like, "Welcome. We're so glad that you joined us today." They rolled out the red carpet. Their boredom of
that's
the
cool.
future. But let me see if I can find. I was in Farms. Then I went home. Yeah, this was. Oh yeah, this was my road trip on Thursday. It was just a crazy
Wow.
week. It was the